This is Karen Ramsey of Super Healthy Children, and I'm here today with Jim Thomas. And I met Jim at my Raw Food Challenge at the end of June 2012, and he had a very interesting story to tell. And so I asked him to come here today to speak with me about some of his experiences and what's happened to him, and the positive changes that he's seen by moving to a more raw food lifestyle. So Jim, thank you so much for speaking with me today.
Good to be here.
Great. I want to ask you if you could tell me, or start telling me about your story and what brought you to be interested in raw foods.
Okay, well, start off, I guess, from the beginning. I wrestled for many years, and as part of being a wrestler, you want to keep your weight down and stay lean. So I would always eat very high protein diets. Atkins, I mean, when I was wrestling, my breakfast consisted of bacon, pepperoni, eggs. My lunch consisted of bacon, pepperoni, and eggs. And my dinner was just as bad. I wrestled up until about 2007, and then
For how many years did you wrestle?
About 13 years. 13 years.
That's a long time.
So my wife and I were expecting our third child, so it was time to hang up my boots and call it quits. So at that time I stopped working out, so I continued to eat the way I was eating. Bacon, eggs.
Wow, you weren't even working it off then.
No. And so I had gained weight. I'd gotten up to close to 300 pounds, and then one morning I woke up and I stepped out of the bed, and it felt like I broke my foot. And I was like, what's going on here? And I couldn't walk. So I went to the doctor. They took some blood, and they said, your uric acid levels are high, you have gout. Okay, what do I do? I can't not walk.
And what were the symptoms, other than that you got out of bed and you felt that your foot was hurting?
Well, aside from just being sluggish, and the most noticeable symptom was the pain. It was really one of the worst pains that I've ever felt. And I've pulled my shoulder out of my socket, I broke my tailbone, I've done all kinds of stuff.
But this was really awful.
Yeah, so this was something. So the uric acid levels were excessively high, and they said, well, what we can do is we give you two medications. One is called allopurinol, which lowers the uric acid levels, and the other is indomethacin, which is a painkiller. And the indomethacin is really terrible when you take it. I mean, the first day I took it, I couldn't even get out of bed because it messes with your head.
So one of the side effects is more fatigue?
Oh yeah, like think of fatigue on steroids. That's what indomethacin does to you. And aside from that, it causes really bad stomach cramping. So eventually the pain went away. It took about a month for it to subside, even with the medication. And I had been, regulating it and keeping it under control. I'd get flare-ups occasionally. And finally my father sent me a book, and it was about raw food. And my father's been a vegan for, I don't even know how long.
Wow, how amazing, your father.
Yeah, my dad.
That's wild.
And he's a picture of health, But I never kind of bought into the health food. I was always of the mentality that if it works, you got to have a prescription for it. So I didn't quite. I read it. It was cool, I tried some of it here and there, but I didn't change my habits enough to really affect the gout. And so finally, when my fifth son was born, I had a bad flare-up. That's why I always keep this, because this is a reminder, because this is the anniversary date of when I really started changing my lifestyle.
What's the anniversary date?
The flare-up was 11/29/2011. Okay, and believe it or not, it wasn't the pain that got me wanting to change. It was I'm very stubborn, so when I called the doctor, I said I need a refill on my indomethacin and allopurinol. He said, well, you haven't been here in a while. You have to come into the office. And my wife was busy with the little ones. She couldn't, and I couldn't walk. So I really had...
So this whole time that you were experiencing this gout, how were you getting around?
Oh, I'd be in bed.
You were in bed?
And sometimes I could get around...
So you couldn't work?
What's that?
Were you able to work?
I was able to work. If I didn't have a flare-up, I was able to work. But once the flare-ups happened, I mean, if I was lucky, I could get around with a cane. But that last flare-up, and when the doctor told me, no, you got to come in, I literally had to get out of bed, crawl to my car, get myself in the car, and drive to the doctor, and I had to crawl into the doctor's office. And I said, that's the last time I'm giving a doctor any of my money. So it was that incident that ticked me off so much that I really started to look into...
That you had to depend on somebody else controlling you like that.
Yes, yes. And so I really started to look into this. And I said, you know what have I got to lose? What have I got to lose? So I started eating raw foods, you know. And then all of a sudden, the gout started clearing up. I started losing weight. I've lost 60 pounds so far.
Wow, 60?
Yeah, 60 pounds.
Since 2011?
Since, 11/29/2011.
Okay, so since November, and we're July, so we're not even a year. I mean, we're a little over half a year, and you've lost 60 pounds.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm 240
That's
now.
great.
I was about 300 at the time. So I started eating this raw food, and everything started going away. The gout started going away. I started feeling better, had more energy. And I started thinking to myself, I wonder if this is just me, or, if it's just my mind or anything. So I did a little experiment on myself, and I don't recommend anybody do this experiment, but I actually induced a flare-up on myself.
How did you do that?
I went to McDonald's. I got I got about 5 Angus wraps.
You wanted to see.
I wanted to see.
Deal.
Exactly. And I induced a flare-up, and I put myself on, eating the foods and drinking fresh juices and things like that. And with medication, it takes about a month. My flare-up was gone in 2 days.
After going back to the juices
Yes.
and the raw food.
Yeah. Yeah, so once the flare-up started, I cut, I didn't eat any more of the garbage, and I just put the foods in, and the flare-up was cleared.
And so when we're talking about raw food, like what kind of raw food were you eating that you feel was really beneficial to healing?
A lot of greens, especially I like to juice my greens. I drink a lot of green juice throughout the day, and fresh fruits. Fresh fruits and vegetables. There's a couple vegetables that I still steam because I don't necessarily like the taste of them raw, but I would say it's about 90% raw. So I get a lot of juice and
Wonderful.
a lot of
And
whole
so what
foods.
you were doing basically was you were changing from a diet that was very acid forming and causing you to have this acid forming condition to a diet that was highly alkalinizing.
Yes.
And so our blood as humans is slightly alkaline, and so you were changing your whole chemistry.
Yeah.
Your whole body chemistry.
Yeah, exactly.
That's really great. And so what happened after that? When you saw this, how did your family look at this?
Well,
I know your father must have been supportive.
Yeah, my father thought it was, he thought it was great, and he said, just look, don't go back to that. Don't go back to that. And everybody else, they see it, and sometimes think I'm a little nuts because I'm not eating the pizza, I'm not eating the cheeseburgers, and
You're not eating the traditional processed food and animal foods that are such a big burden on the digestive system.
Yeah.
That's really an amazing story.
Yeah.
And so how are you feeling today?
I feel great. I feel great, and one of the reasons why I wanted to do this is to let people know that certain things, from my personal experience, something like gout is something that you have control over, and it controls so many people's lives. It does. So you have control over that, and you don't have to control it with this. I haven't taken any medication.
So you're completely off all the meds?
Completely off of medication.
Wow. And how long were you on the meds total?
Oh, it was a couple of years. A couple of years, but they didn't prevent flare-ups.
Well, and you said that they caused all these other side
Yeah.
effects, which most medications do.
Mhm.
So you have other things to deal with that can sometimes be even worse
Yeah.
than the original cause of the problem.
Yeah.
Wow. So, is there anything else that you would want to tell us about your experience and what happened to you? And what about your own family? How do your kids view this? And are they eating more healthfully at home because of it?
We do have a lot more. We do have a lot more vegetables on the plate. The kids aren't as gung ho about eating the way I eat. They can, like I said, think it's odd.
Yeah.
But what we
It will have a great influence on them just by seeing you, watching you, seeing your healing, hearing about it, and knowing that you eat these healthy foods will have an impact on them. Because, parents, their modeling is more powerful than they would think.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that they do like, though, is making the juices. And the juices are a way to get some of that extra nutrients.
Yes.
Especially
very
my 4-year-old.
concentrated. Yeah, that's great. And getting the kids involved in food preparation is a great way to get them to like fruits and vegetables.
Mm-hmm.
That's wonderful. And does your wife prepare food for you, or do you just eat very simply? What's your...
I try to keep it simple. One of the things starting out was I get discouraged because I like to cook. So I do everything too complex. I just kind of scaled it back and then just started, I looked and said, well, just eat it the way God intended me to eat it. And that's the way I do it.
That's right.
Food
Food should be eaten the way that nature intended,
Yeah.
as much as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And if a recipe is made, it should be only with a few ingredients.
Right.
So that it's easier to digest. And that way we can enjoy our time with our family and not be laboring in the kitchen and eat simply and feel great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So wonderful to have your story.
Oh, it's good to share it, and I hope it can, I hope it can help other people.
I'm sure it will.